My name is Christine Muir. I am the community librarian at Cary Library. I am recording this program. My intention is mostly to record Julia's handwork so that if you want to go back and repeat this or practice some more, you'll be able to see what she's doing. But I just wanted to let everybody know that it is being recorded. Like I said initially, if you want to just pop into the chat what kind of experience you have with crocheting or knitting or any other needlework, that would be helpful for us as background information. I'd like to thank the foundation and everyone who's ever donated there for supporting all of our programming at the library. And I'm very happy that today we can do this virtually because, like I said, it has turned to snow where I am. So happy not to be driving. And it'll feel nice and cozy. We'll be creative and warm. So this is a Basics of Crochet class with Julia Chang, who's an LHS graduate and current student at Williams College. And I was so thrilled when she approached me for offering to teach this class. We have a very active knitting group at the library, and so I think there would be a lot of interest in learning crocheting as well. So the way this is going to work, we did run this class last month or the month before, but we called it Basics of Amigurumi, which I think is a word a lot of people don't know. So this time we called it crochet, and look at all of you who've joined us. So lesson learned. So the way this will work is Julia will give an overview of the pattern that we're going to work on today, which is just a basic crochet ball. And she'll explain how that's the basis of amigurumi and show you what that is, which is actually very, very cute. Then she'll go through and she'll demonstrate the different steps in the pattern, and you'll be able to follow along as you're doing it. She will stop at regular intervals to ask if there are any questions. And because we do have 20 people in the group, I'd like to run the Q&A this way. You can put a question into chat at any time and I will keep an eye on that. Julia will stop at intervals to ask if you have any questions or how you're doing with that particular step. And if you could stay muted while she's explaining things and then unmute yourself if you have a question, that brings you to the top of the list on my screen and I can call on you so that we can all hear each other's questions and not speak over each other. So with that, I will turn this over to Julia. Thank you for being here, Julia. Very excited to see how this crowd does with the pattern.
Awesome. Thank you. So welcome everybody, and once again, yes, my name is Julia and I'm an avid crocheter and amigurumi designer. So today we're going to learn how to make this amigurumi ball, which is crocheted and crocheted in the round. And this ball is basically the building block of all of these amigurumi that you see here. And once again, amigurumi just means crocheted stuffed animal, stuffed toy, or doll, like you can see here. Generally things that are crocheted in the round and are kind of cute looking. And the way this ball becomes all of these different toys is that you can see each of these parts is actually just a ball that's like a little bit wider, or maybe like half of a ball, or half a ball that's been squished flat, or maybe like a ball that's kind of like long and thin. So once you learn to make this ball today, you'll be able to make all of the shapes that are necessary to make any amigurumi you might want in the future. So let me back up a bit actually though, for anyone who might not know anything about crocheting. So what is crochet? Crochet is a fiber art similar to knitting that is when you use a hook and yarn to create a fabric. Once again, similar to knitting. So today we'll learn mostly how to make this ball, but the skills that you'll learn today can be transferred to crocheting in general to make like your average, like, you know, hats, scarves, sweaters, things like that, because the basic skills overlap a lot with crocheting in general. So you'll have the foundation to be able to tackle most other projects. Specifically what we're going to learn today is we're going to learn how to read a crochet pattern, which is very similar to a knitting pattern for those of you who know how to knit. And you might even have seen a crochet pattern before. And we'll learn how to make a magic ring, which is the basis of anything crocheted in the round. And we'll learn how to work the single crochet stitch, which is the basic stitch that we use for all amigurumi and is also the foundation for any other more complicated crochet stitches that you might want to learn later on down the road. Finally, we'll learn how to increase and decrease, which creates this nice ball shape. And we'll learn how to finish off and stuff your ball so that you can have it be a little bit firm. So in terms of basic materials, I hope that you've all gathered your materials, but we're going to need a hook and yarn. Hooks and yarn come in all different sizes, and for the purposes of today, what you're using is probably fine, but just in case you want to know, if you have never worked with yarn before, if you don't know what size hook to buy for the yarn that you have, you should just look at the label in the back and see on the back it shows a crochet hook. There's also a knitting needle section, but there's a crochet hook with a millimeter reading and also a size. So this one says US size 6 to 8 or G to H or 4 to 5 millimeters. So those are all different ways to show a different size of crochet hooks. So for instance, the one I'm using today is 3.25 millimeters and it's size G. So those all translate across to each other. So if you ever don't know what size hook to get, you can just grab a ball of yarn that you think looks okay for you, and then look on the back to see the range of hook sizes that you want to be using, just in case you're a beginner. Beyond a hook and yarn, we'll also be using a stitch marker, which basically looks like a large plastic safety pin. And if you don't have this, because this is not really what you think of when you think of crochet materials, you can just use a piece of yarn, and I'll demonstrate how to use both of those today as a stitch marker, or you can even use a actual safety pin if you wanted to. And we'll also be using scissors and a tapestry needle and some stuffing. And I'll go through all those as we go on. Okay, so now let's get started with the ball pattern. I'm going to share the pattern that I'm using right now, and we'll be working from a condensed version in the chat. All right, so this is the pattern that we're gonna be working on. And I just wanna go through quickly what a pattern will look like if you go and buy one online, or if you maybe get one in the store. So there's gonna be the cover, which just tells you what you're working on, and then a list of materials, usually whatever the designer used or whatever is easily accessible at the store that you're at will be listed here. So for instance, today I mentioned that I'm using a 3.25 millimeter hook, so that's why I listed here. You do not always have to use the exact materials that are listed, but those are just if you need guidance or if you really want a specific sense of what you want to be using. It usually also tells you some basic information about the project that you're going to be completing and probably the final size. The most important part of a pattern is the abbreviation section, because crochet patterns are usually split into sections, and then I'll show you right here, and then are broken down into rounds. A round is basically one layer of a crochet project, and each round is broken down into a specific number of stitches in a specific order. So you can see that, but the thing is, all of it is written in kind of code or in abbreviations. So for instance, what the heck does SC mean? What does MR mean? You might not know. So the way you decode this abbreviated pattern is you scroll back up to the abbreviation section where it tells you what every single abbreviation means. So now we know that SC means single crochet, which is what we're going to be learning today, and MR means magic ring, which we'll also be learning. So if you ever find an abbreviation or a for instance, half double crochet stitch that you don't know what it is or how to do it, you should just look it up on Google, look it up on YouTube, and you should probably find a bunch of tutorials to help you there.
Julia, I'm going to step in for 1 second if that's okay. I just want to let people know that I will be emailing this pattern out to everyone. It's a really, really amazing document that Julia put together with these abbreviations and resources at the end. So you will all be getting an email copy of this after the program today with the link to the recording.
Yep, thank you so much. I totally forgot to mention that. Yeah, so the abbreviations are really helpful because if you ever are wondering what something means, then you can just go up here and figure that out. And so once again, this is the pattern, and I'm going to be putting this in the chat later so we can refer to it easily. Usually comes along with some nice progress pictures so that you can make sure you're on track, and some other like small instructions to tell you what to do when you're crocheting. And that's the pattern. So now you should know how to read a pattern, how to decode it, and how to figure out what to do. And just as to go over this, Christine will be sending this to you later, but I've included a tutorials list for everything we're going to be talking about today and more resources, including where to find more patterns, what to do next if you feel like you've mastered this, and so on. All right. So now let's get started. So
And
everyone.
I just want to make sure again that everyone can see the workspace, right?
So can everyone see
Okay,
mine?
I see some nodding, so I'm going to assume we're good.
Okay. So everyone, make sure you have your hook and your yarn handy. We're going to first be learning the magic ring, which once again is the basis for working in the round. But I'm going to go over how to hold the hook first because we're going to be using it to make the magic ring. So there are two different types of way to hold hook. I'm going to show you my favorite way and the first way. It's called a knife grip because, as you might guess, it's very similar to holding a knife. What you're going to do is you're going to identify the part of your hook that is kind of facing you. So like the where it's curved towards you, and you're going to orient it like that and then place it across your fingers like this. Can everyone see that? Awesome. And then you're going to curl your fingers across and then put your thumb so that your thumb is pointing towards the point of the hook. And then you can turn your hand on the side. And it's very similar to how you hold a knife. So you could also think of it like, okay, I'm going to hold a knife, and your thumb is going to be pointed towards the tip of the hook. So this is the knife grip, and you don't have to grip too tightly, but just hold it loosely and make sure that you are able to make sure that your thumb is pointing towards the point is the main part. The other way to hold it is called a pencil grip, where you basically pretend that it's a pencil and you hold it this way. If you feel this is more comfortable, you can definitely go ahead and try to use this. I do not use a pencil grip. I don't really understand how people do, but if you find that it works better for you, then definitely go for it. So knife grip and pencil grip. And for both holds, it's just really important to make sure that you know where the tip of the hook is. So for the knife grip, it's going to be pointed towards your thumb. And for the pencil grip, it's kind of just like off to the side. Okay, so the magic ring. We're going to put a hook aside for a second, and we're going to look at the yarn. So I want everyone to hold your left palm facing up towards you, and identify across your middle three fingers, there's this kind of like rectangle that's being formed by your knuckles. So here's the left side of my rectangle, and here is the right side of my rectangle. And then there's like the bottom right here, and then the top. So I'm going to first, leaving about like 6 inches of yarn off to the side, I'm going to lay my yarn across my fingers so that my yarn goes from the bottom left-hand corner of the rectangle to the top right-hand corner. So once again, a rectangle is kind of like here, and it goes across and up and then across. And my yarn just going diagonally. And then you can secure the yarn by putting your pinky right there to make sure that it doesn't fall off. And then I'm going to flip my left hand over, and I'm going to lay my yarn down the right hand side of my rectangle, so straight down. So remember this rectangle that we drew? I'm just going to go right down the right hand side. And then we're going to flip your hand across one more time and create an X across your fingers by drawing your yarn from the bottom right hand corner to the top left hand corner. So you should see like an X across your fingers right where that rectangle is. And finally, we're going to flip your hand across one more time and draw the yarn down the left-hand side of the rectangle. So now you should have two like double bars or parallel lines across the back of your fingers. And you're going to secure that yarn in place. You can just tuck it under your pinky right there to make sure that it doesn't go away.
Julia, can you do that one more time?
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you.
All right. So you're going to hold your left hand out and identify this rectangle across your fingers. And you're going to draw the yarn in a diagonal line across your fingers so that it goes from the bottom left-hand side of the rectangle to the top right. And then you can put your pinky there to keep it in place. Then you're going to flip your hand over and then lay the yarn down the right-hand side of the rectangle. So straight down, not diagonal. And then we're going to flip our hand over again and then draw the yarn from the bottom right-hand side to the top left-hand corner of the rectangle. So we're going to go diagonally across, and it's going to form an X shape across your fingers. And the last step is to turn your hand over one more time and then lay the yarn down the left-hand side of the rectangle. And you can see that it'll form these parallel lines. And you can keep the yarn in place by tucking it under your pinky. How's everyone doing on this step? Should I do it one more time?
I think people are good. Go ahead and do the next step. And then if we need to go through it one more time, we can.
Okay, awesome. So you should have these two lines on the back and then this X on the front. And you can just keep that in place with your pinky. So now let's grab our hook with your right hand. And you can use whatever grip you want. And we're going to identify the, so like this is the first line and this is the second line. So we're going to identify the area between like these two fingers, so in the bottom section. So I'm gonna demonstrate this twice, so you don't feel like you have to get it the first time. But I'll just show it to you once and I'll do it again so that you can see it again. So what you're gonna do is you're going to take your hook and with the tip facing downwards, go under the first line and go over the second line. And then you're gonna pull the second line under the first line like this. So once again, you're going to take your hook and with the tip facing downwards, you're going to go under the first line, so under this first piece of yarn, and go over the second piece of yarn. And then you're just going to pull your hook back, and the hook will just catch onto the second piece of yarn and then pull it back. And what you're going to do next is you're going to twist your hand from, so you're right here right now, it's kind of 9 degrees. You're going to turn your hand this way so that the yarn twists over your hook and it pulls up a loop. So once again, before you were here, and then you're going to just push your hand away from you in a circle so that a loop twists around your hook. I'll do that whole thing again, just to make it more clear. So you have your hook with the tip facing downwards, and you're going to go under the first line and go over the second line. And then you're going to pull the second line under the first line. And then you're going to twist your hook away from you so that there's a twist of yarn around your hook. How are we feeling about this? Okay, great. So now you have this awkward situation over here with your yarn twisted around and your hook right next to it. So this is the last step. The last step is going to be, we're going to identify this V at the top of our yarn situation right here. So there's this V of yarn with the left side and the right side of the V. And then you have your hook in the bottom with this loop of yarn around it. What we're going to do is, and once again, I'll demonstrate this a couple times so you can see. You're going to, with the tip facing up, you're going to go from left to right under the left leg of the V. So this is your hook, and you're going to go with the tip facing up from left to right under this the left hand side of the V. And then what you're going to do is now you've actually made 2 loops on your hook. You had that first one originally, and because you yarned over, you now have the second bit of yarn over your hook. And then the last step is just to pull this second loop through the original loop. And you're going to do that by just pulling your hook to the side, and then pulling it through so that you have 1 loop left. And then once again, I'll do that a few times to make it make more sense.
And just so everyone knows, I am monitoring the chat. So if you're lost or you want a step repeated, just throw it into chat and I will do my best to either give you a text answer or to see if there's enough interest that we have to repeat a certain place in it. So feel free to use the chat or unmute yourself and I will call on you if you want to ask a question.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. Second time repeating this, you have this loop that's twisted over your hook, and you have this V at the top of your work. And you're going to identify the left leg of the V, and you're going to move your hook with the tip facing up from left to right under the left leg of the V. And then you're going to pull this new, because now it's a loop over your hook, you're going to pull this second loop through the first loop. And you're going to do that by pulling your hook to the side until the second loop pulls through and you only have 1 loop left on your hook.
Beverly, did you have a question?
Yeah, could you go through the X thing at the very beginning again? I was confused about which ends of the yarn were where.
Sure, yeah, definitely. So the X at the beginning is you look at your fingers and you identify this rectangle that's formed by your knuckles right here. And leaving about 6 inches of yarn hanging free, you're going to pull the yarn over your fingers so that it goes from the bottom left-hand side of the rectangle to the top right.
And Julia, I'm just going to jump in. Beverly, the tail is on the left side of the screen and the ball of yarn is on the right side of the screen, if that's the part that you didn't catch previously.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
Very important clarification. Yeah, my working yarn, so the yarn from the ball is on the right, and I realize you can't really see the tail. So it's diagonal, so the tail is on your left, and you're going to go diagonally from left to right, from the bottom left-hand corner to the top right-hand corner, and then you're going to flip your hand over, and then you're going to lay the yarn down the right like side of the rectangle, which is down like your first knuckles. So you're gonna go straight across, and then you're going to flip your hand over, and you're gonna go from the bottom right hand corner to the top left hand corner this time, instead of left to right, going right to left. And you're going to lay it across like this so that it becomes a diagonal, and you should see an X form on your fingers. And then you're going to flip your hand over one more time, and you're going to identify your remaining set of knuckles over here, and you're going to lay the yarn down straight across so that it forms parallel lines. And to keep the yarn there, you're going to tuck it under your pinky.
And Julia, I'm going to have you pause for just a second because Sylvia also has a question. And in case it's related to the next step, I want to catch it in time.
Yeah, sure.
It was related to not the next step, but the one after, when you pull the crochet hook through and my stitch gets really tight and it's hard to pull it through. And I'm just looking for a suggestion about that.
Yeah, sure.
But not yet. Thank you.
Awesome. So this is the most tricky part, because if you want to try to make the stitch a little less tight, you can try pulling your hook like up away from you, because then that kind of stretches the loop a little bit more. And you can also try, because your hook is facing you, right? you can try kind of pushing your hook back and it'll help you get through the loop over here that's a little bit tight. Because if you push your hook back, and then you might be able to get through more easily. So my tips are to pull your hook up so that it makes the loop more like a little bit bigger, and also to push it away from you a little bit, if that makes sense.
That's also, so Julia, we do have some people who've done some knitting, some people who've done very, very basic crochet, and some people with no experience at all. So we have a total gamut here. But getting the right tension and pulling the hook through the yarn is something that practice will get you to the right place. It can be tricky. I've done both knitting and crocheting, and for both, getting the right tension to be able to pull the needle or the hook through the yarn is something that takes a little getting used to, and it will change based on the yarn that you're using and the hook or the needle that you have. So that's where practice really gets you into a better place, and you get more comfortable with figuring out how you can finagle it to go through more easily.
Thank you.
Yeah, and also sometimes if it's really tight, you can just yank it, and that sometimes works. Should I do it one more time?
So we did have a request for you to do it one more time. I'm watching the time and it's almost 10:30. So let's do this one more time. And then I want to show people how the single crochet stitch works. If anybody gets left behind at any point, please stay to watch it. And I will be sending you the recording so you can go through and pause this as you're repeating the steps for yourselves. But for those who have gotten the hang of the magic ring, I want to let them learn the single crochet step too, so that people can be working at different stages.
Mm-hmm. And just as a temperature check, could we just like who's finished the magic ring and who is still working on it?
So if you finish the magic ring, raise your hand or thumbs up. We got a few thumbs up.
All right.
and a few not. So it's hard to judge. Not everybody has their camera on either. So.
That's true. Oh, okay. So I'll do it one more time. I'll do it from beginning to end. So if you missed any steps in the middle, you can just see what happened. So once again, you're going to leave 6 inches of yarn off to the side on the left side, and you're going to lay the yarn across your palm in a diagonal, going from the. So I drew a rectangle. So with the left side formed by like this first set of knuckles and the second side formed by the right side of knuckles. It's not really a perfect rectangle, but you can imagine it. So one side and then the bottom, and the other side and the top. And you're going to lay it from the bottom left-hand corner of this rectangle to the top right-hand corner. And you can just keep the yarn in place with your pinky on the bottom so that it won't fly away. And then after creating this diagonal, you're going to turn your hand over and lay the yarn down the right side of the rectangle so that it's a straight line this time. It's not diagonal. And then you're going to turn your hand over, and you're going to go in a diagonal this time from the bottom right hand side to the top left hand side of the rectangle. And so you go like this, and it should form an X across your palm. And the last step is to turn your hand over again, and then this time you're going to go down the left hand side of the rectangle, straight down. So it forms like a railroad tracks. And to be able to secure it in place, you can just tuck this the yarn you're working with under your pinky, so that your pinky holds it in place. And then the part with the hook, you're going to grab your hook with your right hand, and you're going to identify the first line and the second line. And we're going to be working in like this area for now, like so between your bottom 2 fingers. You're going to take your hook, and with the tip facing downwards, you're going to go under the first line and over the second line. And you're going to just pull the second line towards the right hand side like this. So I'll do that part again. So you're going to go under the first line and over the second line and just pull the yarn to your right. And once you've pulled it past the first line, you're going to, so right now my hand's kind of like sticking up. I'm just going to turn my hand away from me to pull a loop. so that the yarn twists around and forms a loop on my hook. And then I'm going to identify this V shape that's forming across the top 2 fingers of my hand, and I'm going to position my hook with the tip facing upwards, and then identify the left-hand side of the V, and I'm going to go from left to right. So push my hook from left to right under the left-hand side of the V over here. And this forms a second loop. It's not a complete loop, but it's a loop nevertheless. And so now you have 2 loops on your hook. You have this original one that you got when you rotated your hand, and you have this new one that you've just created by going under the left-hand side of the yarn. And now that you have 2 loops, your goal is to just pull the first loop over here through the second loop, which, and you can do that by just pulling your hand to the right, and it might be a little bit tight, so just pull a little bit harder, but you can also literally like push your hook upwards, like away from your hand like this, to create, like make the loop a little bit bigger. And you can also kind of push your hook like backwards a little. That might help. So you pull your the loop through, and you should end up with just 1 loop on your hook like this. How's everyone doing? Any questions?
I think we're good to go to the next step.
Okay, awesome. So now that we're here, we're going to, so you observe there's this 1 loop around your hook, and you have all this stuff going on in your left hand. You can just gently pull your left hand fingers out so that you're left with loop on your hook and then like this stuff happening below it. And this is so I'm gonna call this end of the yarn the tail, which is the yarn that's not attached to the ball, like the end of it. So this is the tail, and this is the working yarn. The working yarn is the part of the yarn that's attached to the ball. So my tail is kind of like tangled up inside my loop, and I can see that this tail is actually going through my loop. So I'm just going to pull it out by just taking the top of it and pulling it out of the circle. This is just to untangle it. I'm not actually manipulating the yarn at all. I'm just untangling the yarn. So I pull the tail out, and so now we can actually see here's a circle, here is the tail, and here is the working yarn. And then there's also this loop around the hook. Does anyone have any questions about that? Are we good?
Nope, don't see any.
Okay, awesome. So now we're gonna think about what we're gonna do with like how we can like move this magic ring. This is a magic ring. We've just made a magic ring, and we're gonna think about how we're gonna be able to manipulate this. So first thing we want to do is we want to tighten the loop that's around your hook. You want it to be like pretty tight at all times. So to do that, pull on the working end of your yarn gently until it becomes very tight around your hook. And then we want to make our magic ring itself, so this loop right here, we want to make this about the size of like a nickel. And so to do that, you can pull on the tail coming off from the left-hand side. Just pull on it gently until it gets to the size of like a nickel, like this. All right. So now we're going to start demonstrating, talking about the single crochet. So also at this point, I'm going to explain how I hold the yarn in my left hand. So when you're working crochet, you always hold the yarn, the hook with your right hand, unless you're left-handed. But generally, you hold the hook with your right hand, and there aren't really other ways to hold the hook and the yarn like there are in knitting. So you always hold the hook with your right hand, and you always hold the yarn with your left hand. And the way you hold your yarn, you can hold the same way that you do when you're knitting, and there are multiple ways to hold your yarn, but one way is you can wrap, like wind the yarn around your pinky, and then wind it around your second finger like this. So let me just demonstrate that again. You can wind your yarn around your pinky a couple times, and then pass it like under your second and third, your fourth and third fingers, and then wind it around your pointer finger. That's one way to do it. And you can also, so the way I do it is I literally just like hold the yarn between my second and third fingers like this, and hold it while holding my work. And you can also just pass it through your fingers. The point is to create tension, meaning to make sure that there's enough resistance in the yarn when you're working with it so that it doesn't like slip away. So you can hold it any way you want. I'm going to hold it like this, like between my second and third fingers, but you can go with what I'm doing, or you can experiment later on with what you feel like is better. So I'm going to hold the yarn in the left hand, and I'm going to also hold my work. And my work meaning right now, I'm just focusing on the loop. I don't care about the tail end of the yarn anymore. I'm just focusing on this loop right here and the yarn right here. That's from my ball. So to work a single crochet, I'm going to hold the yarn so that there's tension in this bit of yarn right here so that I can actually work into it. And I'm going to hold the loop. All right, so I'm going to demonstrate the single crochet now. So with my hook in my right hand, I'm going to go from through the loop from top to bottom, through the loop. And I'm going to identify this piece of yarn over here. And I'm going to maneuver my hook. So now my hook is through the loop. I'm going to go and move my hook with the tip facing up from left to right under this piece of yarn. So it's kind of like what we did for the magic circle. And then what we're going to do after you've moved the hook from left to right under this piece of yarn over here, you're going to just rotate your hook to the left so that it catches on this piece of yarn over here. So otherwise you wouldn't be able to like get hold of it, but if you twist your hook a little bit, then you can actually catch the yarn. So you're going to, after moving your hook from left to right, you're going to twist your hook to the left, and you're going to pull your hook back up through the magic ring they just went into. I'm going to do that step again. So starting from the beginning, you're going to stick your hook in from top to bottom, like through the magic ring. And then you're going to move your hook from left to right under this, the working end of the yarn over here. You're going to do that by just moving your hook to the right. And then you're going to twist your hook to the left slightly so that you can get a hold of this bit of yarn over here. And you're going to pull it back up through the loop that you just went into. And so that you bring up another loop on your hook. So now you have 2 loops. This is called pulling up a loop. Do you have any questions on this step?
Not seeing any yet.
Okay, awesome. So we've got 2 loops now. And then the final step of the single crochet is we're going to make 1 more loop. And we're going to do that by just identifying this working end of the yarn right here. And you're going to move your hook from left to right, just like we did before. And you're going to pull this new loop through the 2 that you've already created. So once again, you were here before, and we're just going to go from left to right under the working end of the yarn that you have. And you're going to pull this 3rd loop through the original 2 loops that we just made. So you do that like this, and that is your single crochet. Shall I do this whole thing again?
Maybe do it one more time, just kind of really smoothly. So, people see the whole process. And while you're doing that, I'll just let people know that's sort of the basis of crochet, is making loops and pulling the yarn through it. And the number of loops you make determines what stitch you're doing. There's single crochet, double crochet, triple crochet, and it's all about how many loops you're making and when you pull the yarn through it. So this is, once you practice it and get comfortable with it, it becomes much smoother, and it flows a little more easily. So if it feels complicated right now, it's because Julia's breaking it down. But when you see it in one smooth motion, I think you'll become a lot more comfortable with it.
Yeah, definitely. And so for everyone who's already made 1 single crochet, repeat this. We're gonna make 6 around total, so you can just continue crocheting. That's what I'm gonna do into this loop, and it's the exact same steps. So we have this magic ring, and we're going to push the hook from the top to bottom, so it goes through the loop, through the magic ring. I have to be careful not to say loop too many times because there's so many loops. So we're going through the magic ring, and we're going to go from left to right under the working yarn like this. And you can tell that my hook is already going through the magic ring. So we're going under the working yarn, and then we're gonna pull a loop up. And we're gonna do that by going back up through the magic ring. And then we're going to yarn over one more time. Yarn over meaning going from left to right under the yarn. And then we're going to pull this loop, this new one. So now you have 3. We're going to pull this newest loop through the first 2 that we already made. So we're going to go like this. And so that's your second single crochet. And if you want to identify how to count your single crochets, then you can turn your work to the side a little bit, and you'll see these V's that start appearing. From the side, it doesn't really look like anything, but from here, you can tell that you have 1 and 2 V's. So that's 2 single crochets. I'm going to just keep doing this until I get 6 stitches all around, and I'll keep walking through the steps. So if you get confused, you can follow along.
And I just put the abbreviated pattern into the chat. So for anybody who's got the hang of this, the first round for making the ball is 6 single crochet stitches. So if you've got the hang of it, go ahead and do all 6.
Yep, exactly. So I'm just going to keep going around and demonstrating. So once again, so now we're here, we have 2 stitches, and I'm just going to go into the magic ring again, and I'm going to go from left to right under the yarn. So I'm going to yarn over, and I'm going to pull a loop up through the magic ring. And I'm going to do that by just pulling it under the magic ring that I went into earlier. And then I'm going to yarn over again, and then I'm going to pull through these 2 remaining loops on my hook. And I'm going to do this just by pulling to the right, and this results in 1 loop remaining on my hook. And so I have 3 now, so I'm going to go into the loop again, the magic ring again, and I'm going to go from left to right under the yarn, and I'm going to pull a loop up through the magic circle, and I'm going to yarn over one more time, and then I'm going to pull through the first 2 loops on the hook. So, and that is 4, and I can count the 4 by looking on the side and seeing, okay, 1 V, 2 V's, 3 V's, 4 V's. So it kind of forms this braided look. So that's 4, and according to our pattern, we need to make 6 single crochets. So we have to do 2 more. So I'm going to go in, I'm going to yarn over, I'm going to pull up a loop, I'm going to yarn over, and then pull it through the 2 loops. And then for our final stitch, I'm going to go into the magic circle, I'm going to yarn over, and I'm going to pull a loop through the magic circle. I'm going to yarn over one more time and pull it through the 2 loops that are on my hook in the beginning. And so that is 6 single crochets. How's everyone doing on this step?
Does everybody have 6 single crochets? People on camera are nodding their heads, yes. So I'll also just say, at any time, if you have a question, you can unmute, which I see Julie has done. So I'll call on you in 1 second, but feel free to keep using the chat or unmute yourself. I'm watching that the whole time, so I can jump in for you with a question at any point. Julie, what's your question?
Could you show the counting of the V's one more time? It's a little tricky to tell what is the knot and what is the first of your crochets.
Yeah, good question. So it's true that the knot kind of looks like a V a little bit, but the V's are generally a lot bigger. And also you can see that each V goes into another. So that might help you a little bit. And the knot is generally smaller than your first V. So it might help you to count backwards from where your hook is. So you can not get confused. So you can identify 1 V, 2 V's, 3 V's, 4, 5, 6. And then this knot kind of looks like a V, but because it's much smaller than the ones I just looked at, it's probably not one of my stitches. Does that help at all?
Sure, thanks.
Okay. And this is a good time to note that if you ever mess up or you don't know what happened with one of your single crochets, you can just pull the working yarn and then it'll come out. And you should just pull it until you get another loop coming from the top of your single crochet. And then you can just stick your hook into that loop and continue. Crochet is a lot easier to, if you mess up, because for knitting it's really hard to go back. But for crochet, you can rip out as many stitches as you want. You can go back and it's perfectly fine. Okay, so now we've made 6 single crochets in our magic circle, and you'll notice that that is round 1 in our pattern that you can see on the chat.
Julie, did you have another question?
I do. I'm sure that it's partially on my end, but there are a lot of internet glitches that I'm assuming are storm related here. Is the transmission from Julia smooth? Will the video later show me what I'm missing?
So far, my connection, knock on wood, please don't jinx me, has been smooth. But I have had trouble with the connection before, so I've turned off all the other devices in the house. So for the moment, everything has been smooth, and so the recording should be in good shape.
I'm sorry about that.
No, it happens a lot. There was a really bad rainstorm in November, I think, and a lot of people in Lexington had some spotty connections. So I don't think there's anything any of us can do about it, but knock wood, my connection has been a pretty smooth transmission so far. So hopefully the recording will come out and be very helpful.
Yeah, hopefully. All right, so we've got 6 single crochets, and then what I'm going to do now is I'm going to close the magic ring. And that means I just want my single crochets to be going all around. I don't want this extra like bit over here that's part of the ring. And I'm going to do that by just pulling on the tail end of the yarn, so the end not attached to the ball. I'm just going to pull it until it's pretty tight and it becomes so that the stitches form a circle. And this is where I'm going to show you how to use a stitch marker. So we're going to use a stitch marker to mark the last stitch of every round. So whenever you crochet around, all around, you're going to know which stitch was your last stitch. Oh, what happened? Oh, never mind. Okay. So I think someone raised their hand.
They did. I was going to let you finish what you're saying. Sylvia and somebody named iPad both have questions. So do you want them now, or do you want to finish the closing?
We'll take them now.
Take them now. Okay, Sylvia, go ahead.
So mine does not look at all like yours. And it's when I pull on the working end, it does not close like yours.
Well, I'm pulling on the tail end, not the working end.
Oh, the tail end, right. That's not, no, that's not doing it either.
Okay, I think yours looks fine. So I'm just gonna.
Oops.
So not only do you, okay, so you're like here right now. And not only do you want to pull on the tail, but you also can push on the end of the stitches that are connected to the tail. So you know how the stitches go from your hook to like the other end? You can just.
Right, it's not moving.
Huh.
I think I missed something along the way.
I'm trying to think why it wouldn't move.
Oh, it also kind of looks like the working end is in the middle of the circle. That's probably not where it's supposed to be.
Yeah, that's probably not, but I don't know whether that should affect your.
I wonder if at some point you started wrapping the tail instead of the working yarn. Can you pull out a stitch at all? If you pull on the working end, can you pull out a loop?
All right, let me see.
Pull gently so you don't lose everything.
Yep, it pulled. You want me to pull out a loop?
Yeah, let's see if.
Uh-oh, I don't know, I've kind of lost the. Yeah, I don't think I did use the tail, but something definitely didn't get wrapped around properly.
I think that, have you tried, like, instead of pulling on the tail, can you push in on the opposite, the end of the stitches that is not your hook? So like pushing like this.
Where the knot is.
like this.
I split the yarn. Hold on a second.
Julia, you're off camera. If you could slide down with your wrists and your palms. Yeah, there you go.
Thank you. Yeah, so instead of pulling on the tail, try pushing in on the this-
Now it, yeah, now it worked. But
Oh, good.
oh,
so maybe it was the last stitch. I don't know. But
just-
now I have no idea how many stitches I have at this point.
that's okay.
All right.
That's correct. Yeah, it's okay if you don't have the right number of stitches because it kind of evens out in the end.
Okay.
Oh,
I'll hold. Thank you.
Okay, cool. So once again, to put your stitch marker in, you're going to identify the last stitch in your round. So in this case, it's just going to be the one closest to your hook if you finish the round. And you're going to take your stitch marker, and you're going to just stick it through. So each stitch is made up of a V on the top, and then there's some, and then there's like the bottom part. But the top you can tell which where it is based on like the V. So one V is one stitch, and that is also the top of the stitch. So you're going to push the stitch marker, like your safety pin, like through through the stitch, meaning right under the V's. So you go like this. So you should see the top of the V, and you should see right under it is your stitch marker, and it goes like a safety pin. If you don't have a safety pin, then what you should do is when you work the last stitch in your round, I'm going to pull this out. So now on number 5, when you make the last stitch in your round, you're going to go through. You're going to take an extra piece of yarn that you have, like right here, and you're going to put it right next to the stitch. And then you're gonna, when you go into the magic ring, you're going to like go over it. So you're gonna go over this this extra piece of yarn that you have so that it's secure under your hook, and you're gonna finish the stitch like normal. And so that way, when you finish your stitch, like this yarn is just going to be sticking through it. And that's how you can tell which stitch is your last stitch in the round. So you can use either of those methods, whichever works best for you. If you find it confusing to get this piece of yarn through your stitch, you can also just stick your hook through the stitch and then like pull the yarn through it.
Julie, just to mention, we see your sleeves, your wrists, your hands, but we can barely see the yarn in your fingers. Awesome. Thank you.
All right, I'll demonstrate that one more time. So to get your stitch marker through, you're going to identify the last stitch in your round, and you're going to stick the stitch marker through like a safety pin. So right under the V at the top. And then you can close the stitch marker like this, and you should just see that there's a last V and then there's a stitch marker right under it. And if you don't have a stitch marker like this, then you can just use a random piece of yarn, and you can get it through the last stitch by pushing your hook through the V, and then by hooking this piece of yarn through the last stitch. And that way you can tell which stitch is the last stitch in your round. So does it make sense to everyone? I'm gonna use a stitch marker, but you can use whichever you want. Do you have any questions at this point?
Kathy does have a question, and I also just want to do a time check for you. It's 5 to 11, so I think we may want to move a little more quickly on the next few rounds so that we can show people how to do the decreasing. And then even if we don't finish the ball in this session, we'll be sending out the pattern, and I will do the recording right away so that if you want to spend this snowy afternoon practicing and catching up, you will have the opportunity to do that. So go ahead, Kathy, what's your question?
So the little safety pin or the stitch marker goes under the V, not in the V.
Yep, it goes under them. So you should still see the whole V. But if you look to the side, you can see that the safety pin
Okay.
is tucked into
Okay,
it.
thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so that segues actually neatly into the next part, which is the increase. So make sure that your work is really tight and it's making a small circle of stitches. So now we're going to start working into the stitches. And to work into the stitches, you identify the V of the next stitch, and you work always to like the left hand side. So your hand is on the right, and you identify the stitch that is to the left hand. And to do that, you see like, okay, I have a bunch of V's around here, and I need to figure out which one is the one that's closest to me. And to work into a stitch, you always work under both legs of the V. So you do not go through the V, you go under it. So when you put your hook through, you should see like the two V's over your hook. And so now we're going to work an increase into every single stitch around. So an increase is basically just two single crochets into one stitch. And so to do that, you first have to work one single crochet into the stitch. And so to do that, I'm going to push my hook through. So this is acting in place of the magic ring now. So I'm pushing my hook like through the stitch or through the magic ring, which is the same thing. And I'm gonna yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, and pull up a loop again. So that is one stitch into one stitch into a single crochet. But because I want to do an increase, meaning two stitches into one, I'm going to go back into that same stitch, and you can tell which is the same stitch because each V is you can tell which V's are empty or like which V's you haven't worked into, but the V that you've partially worked into and you can only see part of, that's the one that you have just made a stitch into. So you're going to make one stitch into the first single crochet, and then you're going to make another one in the same place by going through again, wrapping your yarn around to create a yarn over, pulling up a loop, and then going through both loops. So that is one increase. Once again, one increase is working two stitches into one stitch of the base. And according to our pattern, we're going to have to do increase times 6, meaning 6 increases all around. So for every stitch that you had in the beginning, you're going to work 2 stitches into each one. And I'm going to just keep going around with doing the increases, and let me know if you have any questions at this point.
I'm not seeing any questions, but I am keeping an eye on that. So feel free, everyone, to just unmute or use chat, and we'll keep an eye on that. And just for people, as you're watching Julia do this, she's going under both sides of the V and then pulling that, and then yarning over and pulling through just one side of the V, yarning over and pulling through both loops on the hook. So just in case you weren't seeing that clearly, that's just another way of describing it.
Yeah, so you're going through like the V, and you're at this point you're always going to treat like both of the V's like one loop. So even though it looks like there's more than one thing on your hook, you have this original loop and you have the V's, which counts as one loop. So just like before when you had 2 loops on your hook, and you're going to yarn over, and then you have 2 loops again, and then you're going to yarn over one more time and then pull through the first 2, and so that's one stitch. And just keep on placing 2 stitches into each one stitch. And you can make sure that you're on track by counting. So you know that the stitch marker marks the last stitch in your previous round. So this next one is the first stitch in round 2. So in round 2, I currently have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stitches, and I'm counting the V's along the side once again. And then you can look and see, okay, in the original round, I have 4 more stitches, counting from the bottom. So I now have to work 8 more stitches into my second round.
The nice thing about crochet is it's actually pretty easy to keep practicing this. You can just do single crochets all day long. So it's pretty easy to practice and become comfortable with the tension and the wrist movements and things like that. When I send you the link to the video and the pattern, I will also send you a survey, which have been doing for all of our programs. So you can give us feedback on this particular session, and you can also let us know if there are other things you'd like to see us offer, including additional crochet workshops. So watch for that this afternoon.
Yeah, and when you get all around and you get to the final stitch, which you can tell because your stitch marker is there, you're like, okay, I know that this is the last stitch of my first round, so I've only got one more stitch to work into. So at that point, you can just take the stitch marker out, and then you can work whatever you need to into the last stitch. In this case, it's an increase, so I'm going to work 2 stitches into the last stitch of the round, and now this is a new last stitch of my round, right? So I'm going to reattach a stitch marker into it in whichever way that you're using. So now I've just completed round 2. And you can check that by counting all around.
Are you looking at the pattern, Julia? I did put it into the chat, but
Yeah.
I don't know if you're trying to scroll through. So round 3 is single crochet and then increase. So you end with 18 stitches.
Right. Yeah, so if anyone has finished round 2, then you can look at the pattern, which is in the chat, and see that I'm going to explain this like notation here. So single crochet increase with parentheses in it means you repeat the step in the parentheses 6 times, going around the circle. So what that means is you have 12 stitches to work into. So for each of those stitches, you're going to single crochet, then increase, then single crochet, then increase, and so on. And so an abbreviation to notate that is just to put them in parentheses, which means to repeat them as many times as it says. So in this case, 6 times. And so now we've actually like learned enough for you to get all the way down to round 11. So you can just keep going and crocheting all around and putting a stitch marker at the end of every round. And if you have any questions along the way, or you get stuck, then just let me know, or let Christine know. And I'm going to keep working too, so that you guys can see what it should look like.
So another way of saying that, Julia, is you are increasing in every other stitch, right? So you single crochet in one stitch, and then in the next stitch, you're increasing. So you're basically stitching twice.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So you're doing 1 stitch and then you're doing 2 stitches and 1 and then 2.
I always forget, but I should plan to do, I should plan to have some background music or something for programs like this, because people are working hard, but I don't know how you'll feel about silence. So trying to find the perfect medium between letting you concentrate, but also not having so much dead air. And hopefully as you're working in these rounds, you're getting a little more comfortable with the tension and, moving the hook. For knitters, it can be a big change, I think.
So I've just finished the third round, and so if you've gotten there or if you're on your way, this is what it looks like. It's about the size of a quarter at this point. It's just like a tiny circle. Yeah. How's everyone doing with like these steps? Going good? Okay.
Looks okay. I see some nodding and I see lots of concentration.
Probably it. And the parentheses at the end of each round, like the 6 stitches or 12 stitches, it tells you how many total stitches there are in the round. So you can check at the end with the pattern to make sure you're on track. And if you're missing a stitch here and there, then I would say just don't worry about it, because your ball will still like end up looking about the same. It's not a huge deal.
It's a pretty forgiving pattern. It's also really nice to do something like this because you can do one ball in one sitting. I know we're kind of stretching out the process a little bit today because it's a learning experience, but you can sit down and make one ball and then come back another time and make another one so that you can start piecing together an amigurumi character if you're interested. It's much easier than working on a sweater or a dress pattern because those are not one sitting projects. And it's a little bit tougher to remember where you left off and keep your place and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think it's definitely possible to make this pattern in like 45 minutes or even half an hour. So it's definitely possible to just grind these out.
Yeah.
I've been always thinking about trying to like put catnip on one of these for my cat. But like then I just remember it took me like 45 minutes to get through it and she'll rip it apart. So maybe not.
Years ago, I made my son a robot out of amigurumi. And I think I also made a turtle, like a tiny turtle and a big robot. Those were really fun.
Oh, that's so cute.
Yeah. Yeah, I have to find them. He's 17 now, so that was a long time ago. I don't know where they are now. There's some really great books, though, with lots of different kinds of patterns. I think Julia showed a penguin at the beginning of this morning's program. I really like the penguin, and then there's just so many different possibilities with this.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I think it's amazing because you can make like animals, but you can also make like kind of strange shapes. I feel like amigurumi is more like a sense like a scissor type of construction for crochet as opposed to like any kind of style.
Mm-hmm.
So you can make a cube, you can make kind of weird geometric things. It's mostly just like 3D construction like in the round. I feel like is amigurumi is.
This working in the rounds is also the basis for making hats. So that's another fun thing that you can make.
Yeah, definitely.
Fairly quickly, and same technique here.
And hats are really quick projects too, which is also good.
And then you can add those super fun gigantic pom-poms at the top, which are really cute.
That's a plus.
I like those.
I tried to make my dad a hat the other day, and I made like this giant pom-pom, and it was so fun. He took one look at it and immediately rejected it, and I was just really sad.
Oh,
It's
that's terrible.
Yeah, I don't know. He was very opposed to the whole pom-pom thing.
Well, yeah, that's fine.
So at some point when you're working, you might notice that your ball is becoming more ball-shaped, or it's becoming more like a tiny little bowl, a little bit curved. And if you see that happening, that's okay. It's supposed to happen. So yeah, it becomes more apparent the more you work into it.
It's a sign you're doing it right. It's starting to form a ball shape on its own. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to, just unmute or put in chat. I do have the pattern in chat. Let's see, Julia, are you on round 5?
Yes, I believe so.
So that's single crochet in 3 stitches and then increase. And you do that 6 times to end with 30 stitches.
Exactly.
And then after round 5, you are just single crocheting straight through for rounds 6 through 11.
Yeah, and so
So that's
point,
pretty straightforward.
at that point, it should be like a hemisphere, literally.
I'm impressed. It looks like people are getting the hang of this. I'm not hearing a lot of questions or seeing, I'm seeing people making progress. We do, I did mention this earlier, the library has a fairly active knitting group, and they welcome members of all needle crafts, so it doesn't have to be just knitting. They meet Wednesday nights virtually right now. There is a Zoom link, and you can email Carrie Programs, and I can get you on the mailing list for that Zoom link. Wednesday nights at 6:30, I think they start. It's not so much of a instructional program, but it is an opportunity to just connect with other needle workers and work on it together. And if people are able to offer help, they're very willing to. So that's an opportunity that you all are welcome to take advantage of. And if there's interest in doing something specifically for crochet, I'm open to that too. Sarah?
Yeah, I'm a member of the Wednesday night group, so I'd just like to say we'd love to have new members, and doesn't matter your skill level, and it doesn't matter whether you've doing knitting or crocheting, and some people just come to chat and they just you know, maybe they knit, maybe they don't knit, but it's it's a great way to meet people, and it's a great way to sort of have socialization along with the craft.
How many people generally come on a typical night, Sarah?
Could be 7 to 9.
Oh, okay.
Not a lot, there might have been a little bit more when we met in person.
Sure.
Maybe someday we'll be able to meet in person again. It really depends, but there's a lot of people who come every single week, and it's a really fun group. And also, a bunch of members are also members of the Lexington Arts and Crafts Society, so, and they have a lot of experience. So, and they're very willing to help people.
Well, and it's nice to have that social opportunity, but also it's nice to have that set time that you make for yourself to work on something. It's so easy to get busy and caught up and distracted. And it's kind of nice to say, Wednesdays at 6:30 is when I sit down and knit or crochet. I've recently picked up cross stitching again, and I was just thinking I should come in on Wednesday nights, and that would be, that would make me sit down for an hour on a Wednesday night and work on that a little bit. So it's a very popular group.
I just want to note at this point that I'm at like 6 to 8 now, so I'm just going all around. And this is kind of like more a note on convention, but at this point I'm going to flip my work inside out, meaning like it naturally curves like this, but I'm just going to flip it so it's curved like that. And the only reason why I'm doing that is because the crochet gods have decided that this side looks better than this side. So if you see my ball, this is actually the inside of it as opposed to the outside. It doesn't make a difference in how you make it, or you don't have to if you don't want to. And if you're just starting out, you can just think, okay, that's kind of annoying, so I'm not going to do it. But I'm just explaining that's what I'm doing. So that's why it looks like this on the outside, and that's why my hook is going kind of on the outside of the ball instead of like on the inside. So And do we want to move to the decreases now because it's about 15 minutes before 11?
Yeah, that's a good point. Do you have a piece that you can use to demonstrate the decreasing?
Yep, for sure.
I don't know if anybody is at the point where they are ready to do the decreasing. So if you're not and you just want to watch this, decreasing is not terribly difficult. And like I said, I am recording this and you'll get that. But if you wanted to just watch what Julia does for the the other end of the ball to close it up, you're welcome to do that. And if you're actually at that spot and you can keep up with her, then fantastic.
Yeah, I'm actually not at that point either. So, but yeah, I just want to demonstrate it really quick because it's really straightforward. And once you know how to do it, then you'll be able to finish the pattern. So that's the main reason why. So if you just give me your attention for a few minutes. So to decrease, I'm gonna pretend that I'm doing round. I'm gonna pretend I'm doing round 12. So I'm gonna single crochet 3 and I guess stitch marker.
I'm going to copy the decrease rounds into the chat just to put that part a little bit closer again.
So I'm going to pretend I'm doing round 12. So I'm going to single crochet 3. So 1, 2, 3. And then I'm going to do decrease next. And so a decrease is basically combining 2 stitches into 1 stitch. So like an increase was making 1 stitch into 2 stitches. A decrease is the opposite. So how I'm going to do that is I'm going to identify the next 2 stitches immediately from my hook. So this is the first stitch that's next to my hook, and this is the second stitch away from my hook. And I'm going to first put the hook through the first stitch that's nearest to my hook. I'm going to yarn over. So go from left to right under the working yarn. I'm going to pull up a loop. And then instead of yarning over again, I'm actually going to put my hook into the next open stitch that's to the left of my hook. So I'm working into both the next and the second to next stitch next to my hook. And I'm going to yarn over once more, so then and pull up a loop. So then I have 3 stitches on my hook, 3 loops on my hook. And then to finish a decrease, I'm just going to do the same thing I usually do, which is I yarn over and then pull through, this time all 3 loops on my hook. So pull through all 3 of them. And then you've just combined 2 stitches into 1 stitch. And I'm just going to do that again, but I'm going to keep following round 12. So I'm going to single crochet 3 first. So 1, 2, and 3. So once again, to decrease, I'm going to identify the 2 stitches nearest my hook. I'm going to go through the first one, yarn over and pull up a loop. And then I'm going to go into the next one and then yarn over and pull up a loop, so that I have 3 stitches. I keep saying that, 3 loops on my hook. And then I'm going to yarn over one more time so that I have a total of 4 loops on my hook. And I'm going to pull this newest loop through all 3 of the rest of them. So go through, and that is my decrease. And so that is how you work a decrease. Does anyone have any questions about the decrease?
I don't see any, but if you want to finish that round, just explaining it again, I think the repetition might not hurt.
Yeah, good idea.
Yep.
So I'll just keep working on round 12. So 1, 2, 3, and then next is my decrease. So I'm going to first go into the first stitch that's nearest to my hook, meaning the next 2 stitches that I would work into. I'm going to go into the first one. I'm going to yarn over and pull up a loop, and then instead of yarning over again, I'm going to actually just go into the next stitch and then pull up a loop. So now I have 3 loops on my hook, and now I'm going to yarn over one more time and then pull through all 3 of those original 3 loops. And then I'm done. And then I'm done with my decrease. And now I'm going to just keep repeating that all the way around. So I'll just do that until the end so you can see.
And if anyone has any questions, feel free to jump in. And like I said, if there's interest in doing something like this again, I'd be happy to have Julia run another workshop with the same content, or if you're interested in something else, just let us know with that survey when we send it out this afternoon.
Also, I just want to note that for this one that I'm working on, the stitches are not going to match up exactly with the pattern that I have. So if you're watching the recording, then don't count the stitches and assume that you're going to have the same amount, because this is a demo ball meant for the decreases, not for the specific pattern. Just as a note, a word of caution. I have many demo balls.
Kathy, do you have a question?
Well, I was just wondering, so if I make a mistake, I can call it my demo.
That's a very good point.
It's also crochet. Well, anything can be pretty forgiving. It took me a long time to realize this because I'm a little bit of a perfectionist. But if you're making something for another person, they don't know what the pattern actually is. So they don't know if you did 16 stitches or 14 stitches. The only time it's unforgiving is if your sleeves are different lengths, or you've got a giant hole in your sweater, something like that. Which I did do one time when I made curtains. It didn't occur to me to measure them. So my curtains came out different lengths. But there's a lot of forgiveness, if you're off by one stitch, or if you miss a tiny thing, the finished product may not reflect that. And so we just have to be comfortable with letting it go.
That's for sure. Yeah, so that is the decrease. So hopefully you'll be able to do that in the rest of the pattern. And maybe I can show the finishing off portion now.
Sure.
With my third demo ball. So this is actually what the ball will look like when you are at the second to last round. So this is round
14.
Yeah, just finished round 14. So as you can see, it basically looks very ball shaped now, because I've done the increases here, the SC all around sections, and then the decrease rounds over here, and it's hollow. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab some fiberfill stuffing. It looks like a cloud. If you don't have this, you can also use yarn scraps, or like fabric scraps, or even like I've seen people use plastic bags before. And if you want to get this exact thing, I have it linked on that sheet that Christina will send around later. So you can get it. It's pretty cheap. And what you do is I would break the stuffing up into smaller bits so that it can spread around more evenly. And then I will just, right before I finished the ball, so when the opening is about like this big and say round 14, I'm just going to stuff the ball. And I'm just going to put in enough until it's however firm I want it to be. For me, it's usually pretty firm, so I'm going to put a lot in. It might take more than you think. And if you're using yarn scraps, you can just cut them up so that they're like a bit smaller. And yeah. So let me break this up. So then your ball is probably going to be pretty like squishy and firm. And you are going to fill it all the way up to the top, because after this you aren't going to be able to put in any more stuffing. So I've got it to about here, and I'm pretty happy with that. And so what I'm going to do next is I'm going to work the last round, which is round 15, and I'm going to decrease all the way around. And I'm going to show you how to finish your project off so that you don't have any extra yarn ends sticking out. So I'm just going to decrease all around first. And if you're wondering why I'm working like this way instead of from the center, it's because I flipped my work inside out, which I demonstrated earlier. And if you're not doing this, then that is okay. So I've just 15. And so you'll notice that after the very last round, you still got like a tiny hole at the top. And we don't really want to have a hole. So I'm going to show you how to finish off. And this is what I'm doing now is the last line of instruction in the pattern. So
I'm just going to interrupt for 1 second, Julia. The audio blipped for a minute in my recording. So I'm just going to let people know that what you said is you just finished round 15, which is the last round.
Yep. And so as you can see, even though it's the last round, we still got a little bit of a hole here. So what are we going to do about that? We're going to follow the instructions in the last line of the pattern. So what you're going to do at this point is you're just going to cut your yarn, the working yarn. So now you have one end where the ball of the yarn used to be. And you're just going to pull this loop out really big so that the end of the yarn they just cut, which used to be the working end of the yarn, is just going to go all the way through. And that's going to mean that you can't frog or undo any of your stitches anymore. So after this, it's a point of no return. So you're just going to pull a loop out all the way. And then you can see if you tug on it, nothing will happen. So it's basically impossible to undo anything in this crochet work now. And then to close this little hole, we're going to grab a tapestry needle. A tapestry needle or a darning needle is basically a yarn needle. It's a needle that's really big and kind of blunt that you can use for yarn instead of just thread. And I'm going to thread my my end of the yarn into this needle. And a trick I have is I usually just wrap it around the side, and then which kind of pulls it tight, and then I'm just going to push it through the eye of the needle after that, so it's easier for me to thread through. You can also use a needle threader, or you can just kind of stuff it in. So now I'm going to look at my last round, and I have 6 stitches because that is how many stitches I was supposed to have in the last round. So like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to notice these little, like the bottom of each stitch. So each stitch in the middle is connected by a post. So I actually have 6 posts as well. So what I'm talking about again is like this part that's connected to the bottom of the stitch. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go with my needle, and I'm going to go under, like go through the first stitch and then come out under the second stitch, so that I've actually just kind of gone under this post right here. So as you can see, I've gone under the first stitch and then gone out through the second stitch. And I'm just going to pull my yarn all the way through. And then I'm going to go over the next post over here, and I'm going to go under the second post from my yarn. So I'm going to go over this one, I'm going to go under the next one. And then I'm going to do that one more time. So I'm going to go over the next one and then under the final post.
Julia, so do you recommend any particular kind of needle? I'm noticing yours has a little bit of a bend at the end of it. Is that because it's a darning needle?
I think this is just called a tapestry needle, and these are often used for amigurumi specifically because if you go in, if you're sewing onto a ball, it's easier if the needle is curved.
Yeah.
And I've linked this one in the materials list, so if you want to get this exact one, you can.
Okay.
But otherwise, a normal needle would work just as well. It's not, you don't need it to be curved, but it might help you if you're having trouble getting your needle to come out.
Yeah, I haven't seen a curved one before, and that does look like it would be kind of helpful.
Yeah, but the main thing is just as long as the eye is big enough for your yarn to go through, that's the main thing. So now we've done that 3 times. So we've gone over and under each post 3 times. And then you just pull your yarn tight. So you'll notice that the hole that was there is no longer there. And to tuck this yarn away, we're just going to stick the needle through the center of the hole that was once there, and stick it out and through anywhere in the ball. So just stick it out any old place. And then I'm going to pull the yarn through. And that makes it so that the end of the ball doesn't stick out. So it's tucked neatly away and it's round. So you can't really tell that there was a hole that there before. And to finally get rid of this last end of yarn, you're just going to grab your scissors and cut the yarn at the surface of the ball. And if you can see the end of the yarn, you can just tuck it in with your needle or your hook, and your ball is done. And then you can just smash it around a bit to make it a bit rounder. So this is what it should look like at the end. And you'll notice that you really can't see. This is the magic ring end, and this is the finished off end, and it really, you really can't tell that there was a hole there before. And it's now 11:30. Perfect timing.
Did anybody finish along with us?
I mean, I didn't even finish, so.
I think the first time we did this, I said to Julia, I've never seen the magic ring before. I just made up a way to do it myself. I think that takes a little bit of getting used to, and that's a little bit of a tricky start. But then once you get the hang of it, the single crochet and increasing and decreasing are not that difficult after a little bit of experience, a little bit of practice. So if anybody has any final questions or comments, you are welcome to unmute yourselves or put it into chat. Like I said, I have a couple minutes that I can stay if anybody needs to. And if not, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Julia, for demonstrating this. And like I said, within the next couple of hours, I will send you the recording and the pattern and the survey. So let us know if you'd like to do some more crocheting together. We would be happy to maybe make that happen if we're able to.
Yeah, one more note is that if you're watching the recording, in my handout, I also have like short YouTube tutorials linked for every single skill that we learned. So you can have multiple resources to draw from if one of them isn't working out for you, or maybe if like my hands aren't close enough to the camera or something. I do have videos linked, so that should be helpful.
Thank you. There's a lot of resources in there. So thank you very much, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your weekend. It looks like we will have some good snow to stay inside and maybe practice this a little bit.